Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Batman Arkham Knight New Game Plus video walkthrough. We're now playing as good old Gordon, and I've left this section in because this is a sequence that does hit the mark, because it gives us the idea that maybe Batman is gone, and maybe there's going to be a massive Metal Gear Solid 2 moment where we spend the entire game, you know, procedurally detective stuff forever, nothing else, you know, no Batman stuff. And it's all first person, and we've all been ripped off. But that's not the case. It's just a nice expositional tool that introduces you to this area that you're going to frequent, and to a very weird scripting that Arkham Knight sometimes uses, occasionally for the best, often for the worst. So, to trigger the end of this room, I couldn't honestly tell you what it is. I think it is examine all of the cells, go to the end of the room, and then turn around. If you do it correctly, Batman will be behind you when you turn around, and that's why this is dynamically scripted in such a way. However, I did this earlier on my hard run that I'm trying to get back to New Game Plus, and he wasn't there, no matter what I did. So it could be timed, it could be footsteps based, but I don't really know. It's one of those weird things. All you want to do is turn around after you've looked at stuff. Turn around and Batman's, there he is. And there's Batman. So I think cinematically it works great, but because you're putting it in the hands of the players, there's so many opportunities for us to mess it up. And the Barbara Gordon execution, where it shows the Joker shooting her and crippling her, is a fantastic example. Because if you're like me and you're examining walls and shit and spinning the camera a lot, you're just going to ruin it, and that's what I did. So, as thematic and awesome as it was kind of shitty on my first playthrough. But summon the Batmobile, pull down the wall, and let's get the hell out of Dodge, shall we? This looks really, really good, and the frame rate holds up surprisingly well. Makes me wonder if they're not populating the entire city, if they're just populating that tunnel at that point. I'm interested to see how they render things, because The Witcher could fucking learn from it. That being said, though, can you remember how in all the press releases for this game they mentioned how there's no loading in the world, no loading whatsoever, not a single bit of loading, it's a seamless world, no loading. Did we say no loading? Well, there's no loading. There's loading! And it's not just when you die, even though that's totally true, and I told you it would be. When you die, this fucking loads, and it loads long too. It's not Bloodborne, and it's definitely not Witcher, but it's still pretty long as the frame rate died just then. But guess what? During the Arkham Knight boss fight, I got a mid-level load when he was chasing me on my recording run. And it's corrupted now, so you'll never see it, but I swear to God it exists. And I nearly applauded, because it didn't happen the first time I played the game. I must have really been pushing the processor to do some crazy things. But there was a little bat symbol in the corner spinning and everything. It was the same mid-level load from Arkham City. And they said it didn't exist. Well, guess what, boys? It does. You just have to be going real fast, I guess. You have to be getting on your sack, and that will happen. Which, I think that's one of the worst fights in the game, and it's actually really tough, because the AI knows where you are, and it cuts you off really well, because it's got much better driving than I do, and that is a very, very tricky encounter, for no other reason than because they think it's a good idea. Like, imagine Mr. Freeze if he could run, and that's kind of what you've got, minus the whole combat puzzle aspects. It's a really bad boss fight, and considering he's the main villain of the game, it sucks, because I had high hopes for the Arkham Knight, and I personally think that not only was his plot line severely undermined by how heavy-handed Rocksteady were with hints towards his identity, but it was underwhelming in the gameplay as well, which is the worst possible thing for me. But we're following Gordon now, and God does this game look good. Can you imagine if this game ran at 60? I was going to say just imagine it on PC, but then I read those problems everybody's been having, and Warner actually pulled it, I think. They completely pulled it from Steam because of how bad that experience is. And if you're wondering, Rocksteady did not do the port, guys. Somebody else did the port, and they did a piss poor job. This is not a new thing, this happens all the time. And it's really sad because, although I'm not a PC gamer, and I'm not a big fan of the elitism that PC gaming breeds, I do feel for the people who play PC games, because this is a fantastic game, and they should be able to experience it at 144 Hz, at 120 frames per second, on a super awesome rig that can do that, because that's why they've paid that money. That's why they've supported their platform. And at the moment, they can't. So I think that's really sad. Coming from a console peasant, obviously. This is an interesting thing as well. We're now chasing these people, and to take them down you have to either use the immobilizer or you have to ram them with your car like it's Vin Diesel in Wheelman. And this is all dynamic. They go on kind of a set path, but depending on how well you drive, how good you are at boosting and catching up and just being a, you know, a straight up Gran Turismo beast, you can probably stop these people really quickly. And that might be over at the beginning, but depending on how it works, it might not be so swift. And there's a few sequences like that in the game, which I think is quite interesting. Because Gotham looks great, and an excuse to traverse it is always fun in my book. But pick up Gordon, and now we're going to be taking out his militia forces occupying the Clocktower. So on the map you'll notice there's a bunch of orange triangles. When those triangles go red it means they know where you are. Up in the top right it will tell you how many reinforcements there is. So there was 11 tanks, now there's 10. The tanks that are coming after us are the light drones. You can tell with the purple light on them. Very easy to kill. My favourite drone because they're fun to fight. They don't linger. They're enough of a threat when they're in numbers, and it keeps it fresh and interesting because you can generally kill them really quickly. As I'm demonstrating right now. You can run a train on these enemies. But I'm also using this as an opportunity to build my combo, and apparently I'm going to use it on 2 enemies. That is not the best choice, but, you know, I was probably feeling quite cavalier at the time. But the little slow motion tells us it's the end of the fight, and then you can follow the waypoint and get on with it. So you can get no-hit bonuses in the Batmobile. You can get them in the Predator sections. You can get not seen and not shot, I think is the terminology it uses on the scorecard. The problem with it is they don't give you any points. It's the strangest thing in the world. Like, on my playthrough that I'm doing to get back to New Game Plus to hopefully finish this guide, the first 20 or so fights on the game I didn't get touched. And you know the no-hit bonus? It was lower than the gadget bonus. How does that work? If you do a fight without getting touched, is that not the peak of playing? Is that not, you know, Batman to a T? Although Batman, you know, generally does get grabbed and shit in the films and in the cartoon and what have you in the books. I say the books, the comics. But when you do that, you should be rewarded. There was a nice transition there, because once again, I had a little issue with the game. Don't know why. It's only crashed twice, but that was the area that it did it in. And I'm going to show you a nice little sequence here where I choke a bitch out. There's the medic. And then we're going to proceed to destroy his friends. So now there's 5 of them. And there's a lot of conveniently spaced girders for you to stand on. I like it when they've got drones. There's a mechanic in this game where if you hack the guy controlling the drone, you can use the drone to kill people. And it's so good. So wonderfully good. As we slowly choke this dude. And then get back up on the roof. But I tried not to spend too much time in detective vision, because I know from looking at comments on other Arkham Knight playthroughs that I've been checking out that people don't like it. I don't know why. I think it looks great, but I understand that they want to watch the beautiful looking game, so I'm going to use it when I need to, and I'm going to try and minimise that as best I can. I did have a couple of thoughts as well on what I'm going to do with the rest of the walkthrough. I had the idea of maybe just transitioning to hard and finishing the rest of the guide, but doing it live, and that way I can monitor the recording at the same time, because the idea that I had was, instead of just sitting down and recording it in bulk, I could record, you know, a 30-minute video and then immediately go and edit it, and then I could go back and record another one and do it like that. And if I do it that way, I can check to see if anything's happening with the footage, with the capture device, and I can also give the machinery, you know, a couple of minutes while I'm editing it to cool down or cool off or whatever, you know, might be going wrong with it. I don't want to do that, if I'm honest, because, you know, I paid a lot of money for this stuff. It should fucking work, and it has fluently until yesterday, where it ruined a large chunk of my day, and I don't know why. And there was a big transition just there of exposition, and what will happen is that after Joker's finished berating you, that wheelchair will appear out of thin air, because it wasn't there before, and then as soon as you touch it, Gordon turns up, more exposition, and then you come over to this computer, and we're going to use the computer to track the Arkham Knight in some of the most enjoyable detective stuff from any Arkham game I've played. So I don't know if anybody watched my Arkham Origins. How can you watch my Arkham Knight? It doesn't technically exist yet. But my Arkham Origins walkthrough, I mentioned that the detective sections were really fun in that game, but they held your hand too much. So there was nothing really to do, there was no puzzle solving, it was all about finding the right spot and scanning things. Well, I think the ones in this game, they don't hold your hand so much, so they give you the opportunity to actually figure things out. And I love this whole scanning the screen at the right moment and what have you. It really reminds me of Remember Me, and if you didn't play Remember Me, I don't blame you, because I think the gameplay on that game was kind of shitty. It was like a subpar Batman in combat and subpar Batman in platforming. But it had these wonderful memory sections where you infiltrated people's memories and you changed the events on them based on your actions to get them to do certain things. And it involved rewinding and moving things. It was kind of like being Death in Final Destinations, minus all the whiny teens and, you know, blonde bimbos. But it was a really cool mechanic. And that's what this kind of reminds me to a lesser extent. I don't think it's as good as that mechanic because I don't think it's quite as effective, but it's still interesting. And then it leads us to this, where we're tracking the tyre tracks in the Batmobile in one of the worst mechanics in the game. So this is a piece of shit. And it's a piece of shit because it doesn't work. And when it does work, it works in a very arbitrary game way. If you are not on the tracks when you press up to send a sweep out to scan, it will not show you the path. You cannot drive ahead and scan to see if it's on the road. You have to be on the fucking tracks to do it. It's so pedantic and stupid. It's the most old-fashioned notion ever. The good news is, if you know where to go, there's a chance you might be able to just drive to where the van has crashed, where the Arkham Knight is, and get on with your day. But I don't think you will, because I think the game is scripted in such a way that it's really that pedantic. And I think that's inexcusable, personally. It's just... It's like 1999 mechanics, that, and we're not there anymore. You know, we've come a long way. This game's visuals alone tell us that we've come a long way. Yet the game wants us to do the most arbitrary thing, and it's a shame too, because almost everything else seems really streamlined and really up to the point of working really well. Be careful here. If you go too far away, you will fail. But this is one of the defend the bomb missions. You'll notice it said we've got 14 of the reinforcements to kill. All of this is good practice, and this is mandatory, unfortunately. So even if you want to skip this because you think the tank stuff is boring, you can't, I don't think. But just build your special bar, or if you had special bar to begin with, wait for a ton of tanks and then use it. One thing to know, if you get shot, you will lose a bar of your special, so this is really important that you don't get hit. And one thing I would like about the Batmobile, and I don't know if you can upgrade to get it because I haven't really checked its upgrades enough, but when you're dodging in the Batmobile, it'd be nice if you held the dodge button, it dodged a little bit greater distance. That'd be a really cool thing, because the amount of times where I dodge to try and get out of the way of lasers, but I'm still in lasers, and then the recovery before the next dodge I get shot is quite high, and it would make it much easier to avoid stuff if you were able to just get a little bit extra distance and control it. And here is the rev mechanic. You saw this when we first traversed the rooftops on the Batmobile. I don't know what they were smoking the day they designed that, but I'm very curious if anybody in the comments likes that as a mechanic, to kind of lightly brush the trigger in a few times to get it to the top and then hold it. I really like Rocksteady, guys, and I love this game, but there's some choices in it where I just scratch my head like, who is that for? Who sat down and said, oh, look what I've done on this particular moment to make the gamer really feel like he's controlling it and he's doing something slightly different than just pressing A. And then the guy looks over his shoulder, sees what he's done, he's like, genius. And then there's me sat over at the water cooler drinking, and I spit the water, and I'm just like, are you drunk? Are you smoking good crack or bad crack here? Which one? Like, come on, guys. Such a baffling thing. And this is a game filled with genius, but also juxtaposed with just these moments of just, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? And then you realise 1/3 of the gameplay is comprised of, what are you doing, dude? Because that's what the Batmobile is. It's that moment where you go, and we're going to be doing this how much in this game? Really? But it is fun, outside of trigger pulling and sweeping for lines that only appear when you stood on the lines and, and whatever arbitrary nonsense they want to push at you. Ooh, another thing as well, shout outs to Manbat for shitting me up while I was recording this walkthrough. I did not even know he was in the game, and I did not see him in my first playthrough, but I am going to ascend to one of the rooftops going towards an objective, and he's going to scream in my face. It was great. I did not expect it. Okay, so I am not going the right way. It's just underneath the Eiffel Tower thing. So this is a new mechanic as well. When you're scaling a building, you have the ability now to preemptively pick another grapple point and chain grapple points. It's a really cool system that I think works fantastically. And when I was scanning the upgrades earlier, I also noticed you can upgrade the grapple boost so that it goes twice as fast and carries you along more distance, but I haven't ever done it yet, so I'm really looking forward to that. And I apologise if anybody's expecting me to get that, or are frustrated that I don't have that, but I got the upgrades I wanted, and then I kind of just didn't bother because I didn't really know what I wanted to buy, and I didn't want to buy anything that people weren't really going to have, which is always something that I struggle with when I make any kind of walkthrough. Because I believe the whole point of these videos is to help somebody who doesn't necessarily have the best skills or the time to accrue those skills, so they want an easy route through things, and if I'm using something eclectic and specific to do that, it doesn't help the guy who doesn't have the points to do that. You know, and I want to try and make it as multi-purpose as it can be, which is why for a lot of stuff I do guides in a very specific way, but I don't recommend that you do them in the same way. And a great example of this would be Final Fantasy Type 0, which I actually beat the other day on a Gito difficulty, and the final chapter on that game is the worst thing I've played this year. It's completely irredeemably bad and unforgivable on almost every fundamental level. And it all stems from the fact that it is not a game balanced towards that kind of difficulty, in spite of the fact that two of its hardest difficulties are exactly that. It doesn't make any sense. And it would be fixed so easily if you could revive people in the safe zones with Phoenix Downs, Phoenix Pinions, or something like that. But you can't. And it baffles my fucking mind. And it makes that game incredibly difficult. And then there are areas where you have to do massive gauntlets, where you don't have a save point, and everyone dies in one hit because everything's a super higher level than you, and if you run out of people, you're fucked. Because when you get to that save point, if you've only got one guy left, you've got to do the rest of that level with one guy, and that could be 2 rooms, 1 room, or 50 rooms. And that's one hit kills from everything. Like, it crosses the boundaries of just poor taste in design. Because there's no checkpoints, the only checkpoints are save points. You can't revive at those save points unless you have, I think, this ability called re-raise, and I never ever got that throughout the entire game. Like, and then to make it even worse, it'll do, on Chapter 8, it does this beautiful thing where it makes you fight a gauntlet of rooms, and then you get a save point after doing about 10 rooms full of dudes, which is one of the toughest gauntlets in the game, and then after that, you walk through a room, get a cutscene, and it gives you a save point afterwards. Like, really? This is how we're gonna play? But I'll probably never make a walkthrough for that game because of how just the taste it's left in my mouth. And I really think that's a great game, and I really think it's a fun game, but when you have one-hit kills and no functional way to revive outside of some super eclectic bullshit that I never learnt throughout the entire game, like, I just don't know. It's one of those things that it's just horrendous, and it makes me so glad when I play a game like this that has semi-decent checkpoints, that people understand that that's how that should be. Like, if in this game, when you get shot by guns, you die pretty much instantly. Especially if you're rocking my life bar, you die real fast, especially from a shotgun. Like, there is a boss in this game called Arkham Knight coming up, and he kills you in one hit when he shoots you with a rifle, because the point of the fight is to not get seen. It's a little bit like the Deadshot, not Deadshot, what's his name? Is he called Deadshot? I forget. The guy who's cheap in Injustice, that guy. On Arkham Origins, it's very similar to that, only it's nowhere near as interesting as that. And I'm going to talk about that when we get to it, because there's a lot of people that don't like it when I do so beforehand, but fuck those people. You take care now.